Old school K-pop's coming back in 2017, and I love it. A number of first-generation K-pop idols have been returning in the past couple of years, and in 2017 is no different. So we'll be talking about why it's good for these old school K-pop groups to be coming back to the forefront, and how they'll be introducing music to the new generation of K-poppers. These first-generation K-pop groups coming back really brings this nostalgia back to many people, as well as the 90s musical sound. You're going to see a lot of people from their late 20s to their mid-30s coming back to K-pop just because their favorite groups from the 90s and early 2000s are coming back. Nostalgia is a powerful concept. It makes us think about happier times and our childhood, away from stress and away from the daily grind of work. Now in Korea, for the past couple of years, nostalgia has hit an all-time high, and we look no further than the drama Reply 1997. Now, if you guys haven't watched Reply 1997, it brought a lot of nostalgia to old school K-pop fans. In fact, the first half of the drama series was talking about two big groups in the 90s, Sechs Kies and H.O.D. And just by watching this drama, it really just brought out a lot of the nostalgia to the people that grew up as either a kid or a teenager during this era. Now let's talk about some of the groups that have come back in the last couple of years. First is Shinhwa. And Shinhwa was gone for a good couple of years, reunited in 2011 to form the Shinhwa company, and then debuting in 2012 a year later. Ever since 2012, Shinhwa's had a concert every year. And you know what? Shinhwa still has the moves and the charm. It feels like they never even aged as well. Shinhwa was one of the groups that I personally grew up to in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it just feels like it brings me back to my teenage years as well. The next group is G.O.D, or Groove Overdose. They debuted in 1999, broke up in 2005, and had a 9-year hiatus, coming back in 2014 with the Ugly Duckling. And during their 9-year hiatus, they went into the army, or they did acting roles, or they just needed to get away from the K-pop industry. But after they came back in 2014, they have been going strong as well. In fact, G.O.D was so popular, they were at one point considered the nation's boy idol group. The next group is Sechs Kies, or Jackie, and they came back very recently in 2016. Now with Jackie, as I mentioned earlier, they're one of the big groups to rival H.O.T. And back in the late 90s, especially 1997 and 1998, they were engaged in a fierce rivalry. And the sad thing about Jackies is they only lasted 3 years, from 1997 to 2000. Then they broke up. And that's a shame because Jackie had a huge hit in 1998 called Couple. And that song gained them immense popularity in the late 90s. I have a lot of friends that love Jackie and just say, man, I wish they came back. If Jackie came back, I would come back to K-pop. And lo and behold, they're back now. It's awesome to see. In fact, their 2016 album, Re-Album, has many of their older songs in there and has brought back a lot of nostalgia to me. But coming back into K-pop after all these years is not easy, as Jackie member Unji once states that the K-pop field has changed. Being an idol back then, in many ways, was so much simpler than it is today, especially without social media or YouTube. Back then, the video quality wasn't as high, and they had really simple choreography, and that was considered okay. But now in K-pop, you have to have high-budget videos and slick choreography. And Unji notes that today's idols have to be more like EXO or Big Bang, where they have to be multi-talented. You can't really be a one-trick pony anymore. Which is not to say that all of the bands in the 90s were one-trick ponies, of course. It's just that it's a lot harder now to attract an audience in today's K-pop world. And now my favorite, S.E.S. They're finally back. They're actually my favorite K-pop group of all time. And wow, I just got like the K-pop nerd chills when they came back. I remember listening to so much S.E.S during high school and college, as well as every time I went to Koreatown in Los Angeles, I'd have to look for the newest S.E.S album. That's how engrossed I was in S.E.S back in the day. 5 years ago in 2012, I actually got to meet Bada. Now I felt that the hints that an S.E.S comeback were there, as that the members would show up on variety shows, you'd see them more in the public, but now that they're back, it's just really awesome again. In fact, like Jackie, they came up with their own album, which celebrates their 20th anniversary when they first debuted in 1997, as well as a couple of remix songs of their older hits. Now with all these groups that I just mentioned, it just really goes down to, again, nostalgia and banking on the audience of the older crowd, the late 20s, the mid 30-year-olds. And yes, they probably won't reclaim their former status as the former kings and queens of K-pop. And I feel that having all these old school groups come back show that age is just a number in the end, that you can still be successful once you go over 30 years old, which is a rarity in K-pop because, as you guys know, most K-pop stars start training when they're in their mid-teens and pretty much flame out when they're like 24, 25, 26. And it's a shame because I want to see more mature sound in K-pop, not just like the teeny bopper stuff, which I do love, but I just want to see that balance. It's also great too because we can have the newer generation of K-pop fans know who these people are, know who Shinhwa is, or know who G.O.D is, or Jackie. And yes, I've actually met kids that don't know who S.E.S is or barely heard of them. It's really weird, but you'll have that generation, 20, 30 years pass, and they won't know who the first generation of singers were. But you know what? It's really cool to see a lot of the newer groups pay homage to their onis and hyungs, or their older sisters and older brothers of K-pop. What's really cool is I do see a lot of the newer generation on YouTube saying, I found out who S.E.S is or who Shinhwa is through my favorite new bias. So it's really cool to see the newer generation paying respect to their older brethren. So the question begs, why are these first and second generation idols coming back 5, 10, or even 15 years later, like in S.E.S case? Well, I don't have a concrete answer to this. I can take a stab at it. So I feel like maybe a lot of the idols were pressured back then to do so much back then and just wanted to break from K-pop, you know, the hectic work schedule, the daily appearances on TV, the interviews, the spotlight. They just wanted a life again. Some of them wanted to do other things, such as going to TV, dramas, or movies. Some of them wanted families, and others had to serve their military service if they're a guy. Now, as old as these first generation K-pop groups are, it really feels like they haven't really aged at all. Like, a lot of them look like they're still in their mid to late 20s. I'm like, how do they do this? All we need now, since a lot of the first generation groups came back, is if H.O.T came back. Like, I don't know, my world might explode if H.O.T came back. Like, Checky and H.O.T, whew. Now, I feel a lot of the old school first generation K-pop groups coming back is going to bring a lot of the older K-pop fans that are now adults back into mainstream K-pop. And another good thing about these old school K-pop groups coming back is that it shows that you can be successful after 30. You know, age is just a number. And like, I feel like in other countries such as J-pop and US music, there are a lot more groups in those two countries that have 30, 35, even 40-year-olds and above that are doing really well. And I feel that that's what K-pop needs. It encourages K-pop singers to stay around. I feel that it will grow K-pop more if you have more of the older, more mature sound. Just a couple examples in my head. You have Japanese group EXILE, which you have members ranging from their 20s to members ranging in their 40s. And in the US, you have not just like groups, but you have solo singers such as Bruno Mars, Beyonce, and Justin Timberlake. They're all in their 30s and still killing it. And I feel like in K-pop, the only time you can be a solo singer and 30 and over is that if you're a ballad singer. Or JYP. And it really skews down to the younger you are, more marketable you are. But once you get to a certain age, maybe mid-20s, you're pretty much discarded as old. So, you know, I think K-pop can grow out of that. Let's get some more mature sounds. Let's get some more contemporary beats in K-pop. And I feel like these older first-generation K-pop groups can just show the younger generation that they're still cool. They still got the moves, especially Shinhwa. They definitely got the moves. They can show how it's done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video on nostalgia and first generation groups making a comeback. Now over to you. Are you guys an old school K-pop fan, a K-pop fan in the 2000s, or a new school K-pop fan? I'd love to hear your comments in the comments below. And if you guys liked what you saw in this video and want to learn more about in-depth K-pop, please hit the subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. And lastly, if you guys want my upcoming free ebook on K-pop journalism, please sign up for the email list below. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy, guys.